Hey everyone, if you are just joining us, thank you so much for coming to our final session of our fall series Preview Occidental. Today we are going to be discussing residential living at Oxy and in Los Angeles. So we'll give just a few more minutes for students to file in. We know this has been a very busy week for most of you on top of what has been likely a very busy semester. And so we certainly want to let you know just how much we appreciate you all making time to come and hear a little bit more about Oxy, learn what makes our community such a special place, and hear it straight from the source. My name is Julius, and I'm an admission counselor here at Oxy, but I am joined by four awesome students who are really going to help us lift up what our residential community looks like at Oxy and why it is in so many ways at the center of the Oxy experience. So it looks like our numbers have gone ahead and flattened out a bit. People are starting to self-join, which is good. Just some housekeeping notes, if you will. We will certainly be able to take your questions on everything from the residential experience to student life to questions on living in a dorm at Oxy. So you are welcome to submit your questions throughout the session in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Do not use the chat box. However, we have a couple of admission counselors with us in the wings who will be sharing some links as we go through the session. But your questions should go through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to go ahead and actually begin sharing a screen I normally avoid PowerPoints in these presentations, but I feel like today it'll be especially helpful. Ruby, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first, just briefly, who you are, what you do at Oxy? Would be lovely.
Hi everyone, I'm Ruby. I'm a senior at Oxy. I'm majoring in math. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot everything I do at Oxy. I'm minoring in urban and environmental policy, and with the admissions office, I'm a senior fellow, which means I interview prospective students. So maybe you'll see me, who knows? And outside of that, I'm involved in a few things. Greek life, I'm a transfer student, so I'm the president of the Transfer Student Union, and other various things. But yeah, I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. And Lauren, would you mind going next?
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren, and like Ruby, I'm also a senior. I'm a diplomacy and world affairs major and urban and environmental policy minor as well. And on campus, I'm a campus tour guide, and I was a first year RA.
Awesome. And Luca, why don't you go next?
Hey y'all, my name's Luca, he, him pronouns. I am a junior from Alameda, California in the Bay Area. On campus, I am the vice president of our men's ultimate frisbee team. I sit in the Glee Club, and I do research in the economics department. Oh, I'm an econ major, math minor, by the way.
Awesome. And Camilla, tell us all about you.
Hi everyone, my name's Camilla. Pronoun she, her, hers. I'm a junior economics major, and I have 2 minors in critical theory and social justice, as well as Black studies. I'm a member of the women's volleyball team at Oxy, and I work in admissions on the blog and the social media, and I also work on campus as a resident advisor in the residence halls.
Absolutely. And I think today, especially, we're really going to be kind of reflecting on some of our journeys at Oxy through housing predominantly. And to kind of kick this session off, I think it's helpful to start by understanding a bit about, how the campus looks at Oxy. Who comes to Oxy, right? All these things that inform housing. We are, just by the numbers, a school of about 2,000 students, all at the undergraduate level. We have about 13 different residence halls that students live on, typically for all 4 years. We do require housing for the first 3 years. Though seniors have the option to live off campus, the majority of seniors will choose to stay on campus for all 4 years, for that senior year as well. And that, in many ways, I think at least, is because of the range of housing options there are, and how housing really does contribute in so many ways to that Oxy student life experience. So you can see that campus is really spread out quite broadly, about over 125 acres. And there's no one area of campus that residence halls are concentrated on. They extend all the way from our far western side of Newcomb to Burkus Hall, I should say, all the way on the eastern side, as well as a few Oxy-owned houses sprinkled in the neighborhood that we will kind of discuss. In short, though, there are 3 types of housing at Oxy: first-year housing, themed living, and then upper-class housing. all first year students live together in one of 5 different first year halls. And we're going to spend a couple seconds just looking at them, getting to know kind of what these halls are, what make them special, and kind of hear from our students about their experiences. First year halls, right? Very exciting. Certainly one of the most exciting things when I was looking at colleges back in 2011 was trying to understand that residential experience. Chilcott is one of our first year halls. And Camilla, you were actually an RA in Chilcott, I believe. But before we even talk about your experience as an RA, I'm just curious what you were thinking as a first year incoming student. What kind of concerns did you have around housing, especially coming from the East Coast? What was on your mind?
A lot of different things. So I think being from the East Coast, I was really worried about figuring out a way to get all that I needed for my room without like bringing 5 suitcases. So something that I found to be really helpful was ordering a lot of my stuff online, like my bedding and like a hamper and like lamps and stuff like that. I ordered it online and had it shipped to the school to my mailbox. And that just was a big help also because I don't have a car in LA. It was going to be kind of hard to go to the store and get all of that, especially not knowing anyone at Oxy yet. And then another concern, which I think is kind of a general concern that most people have, is will I get along with my roommate? And Oxy does a really great job of pairing people together. They send out a survey and you write in your preferences. For example, they ask what time do you usually go to bed, so they can pair like people who are night owls up together and people who are early risers up together, and a bunch of other questions like that. They even ask like what kind of music do you like, which I thought was cool of them to consider. And I went random and I got a really great roommate who is also from the East Coast. She's from Brooklyn. So and she was also an athlete in the same season. So we ended up pairing up really well together. And I think Oxy does a good job of that overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that roommate anxiety is on a lot of students' minds. And rightly so. It's a big transition to be living in a shared space with someone else. One of our other first year halls is Braun, which is all the way on the top of campus. And Lauren, you were an RA there, which I love. Actually, Braun was the hall that I lived in as a first year, so certainly a lot of Braun fandom here. But how would you help that transition as an RA for first year students that are coming into shared spaces? What were sort of common issues you saw, or did you even really see issues? And how, I guess, kind of would you explain everything from what goes into a hall? How many people are at doubles and triples to the kinds of conversations that you helped facilitate to ease in that transition? I realize that's a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like Camille, I came from the East Coast my first year, and like finding community was a struggle for me at that time. So when I became an RA, that's something that we really wanted to focus on in Braun. And I remember my first year, we have a big program for all of the residents in the buildings. And that year, Braun paired up with the first year residence hall right beside us, Dewey, and we had a big barbecue. It was actually a really amazing time. We were grilling and there was volleyball and water balloons, and programs like that are just ways that we try to bring all the students together at the start, sort of ease any social anxieties that may be going on. Like can sometimes be hard to come up to someone and just start talking like, hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. But when you can like join the volleyball game or grab a hot dog next to someone, that makes it a lot easier sometimes. So that's one of the ways that we try to sort of create that community. And also having students branch out to other aspects of campus, like some of the passive programming might be providing free tickets that our office pays for, and then we give out to students to get them to experience other parts of campus life. Like dance production was one of them. We gave out tickets to go see this big dance show on campus. And then you might sit beside someone you don't know while you're there, and like while you're just cheering and enjoying the show, you make new connections that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably worth mentioning that most of our residence halls, for first years especially, are going to be relatively small. There are only about 100 students in them, which make it quite easy to get to know the people in your hall in that first month of school. really giving you a community within the larger Oxy community. Let's see, what hall do we have next? We have Stewie Hall, which is right across from Braun, and certainly a good time. They've got kind of a shared lawn between Stewie, or Stewart Cleveland, as it's formerly known as, and Braun that hosts everything from what Lauren was saying, kind of that's kickoff barbecue to Springfest. Sometimes we'll have their start of their carnival on Stewie Beach. This was actually, I think, taken during my time as a student with a whole pre-concert. So we had a good year. BY is another first year hall. And Luke, I believe you lived in BY, is that correct? What was your first year living experience like? You were coming from Northern California, but most students at Oxy are going to be one of the only students in their high school, to come to Oxy in any given year, right? There are no real feeder schools, so to speak. You're never going to see kind of huge groups of students who already know each other. So for most students, that first year is really you're starting from scratch. So I'm just curious, Luca, how you experienced that first year transition and adjustment. What's your story?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I was really nervous about was just like the general heat coming from Northern California. I know it's not even that much of a transition, but I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. And I didn't apply to Oxy for the weather, but I definitely adapted to it really quickly. When I got into Bellion, I actually moved in a week ahead of people for Oxy Engage. So neither of my roommates were in the room when I got there, actually. And that was a really fantastic program where I got to meet people during the day, going out and exploring LA. Essentially, Oxy Engage is like this 2-day program that they host right before everyone is actually moved in for orientation. And you can either go see museums in LA, you can go learn about like queer history in LA. I went on LA Wilderness, so I got to go kayaking down the LA River, which was fun. But I just remember like when I first moved in, there was kind of like this sense of like how big my room was and how there was no one there, and it was kind of impending. And I remember on that first night, everyone else who was in Oxy Engage, they ended up going out into the common room, and everyone was there like getting to know people, telling stories, laughing, and I could kind of hear it through my wall because I was right next to the common room, and I just kind of sat there with myself for the evening. I was like, they're making friends without me. This isn't fun. And then I remember like the second night, it happened again. Everyone was out there being loud, telling stories, making friends. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go test the waters. I'm gonna go out there and see what I can do. And I remember just like sitting in that common room, staying up until like 3 a.m., just kind of talking to people about how I was feeling about college, because everyone's nervous. And everyone was just there. And some of the people who I met that night, just kind of sitting in the common room, are still like some of my closest friends around campus. My roommates ended up moving in 2 days later. And again, Oxy did a fantastic job. They may have, with one of my roommates, they might have missed the mark a little bit in terms of bedtimes, but I think his sleep schedule was quite irregular. So I think that would have been hard to pair in any scenario. But I just remember I had 2 roommates, and day 2, I was on a soccer field with both of them, just kind of passing the ball around and getting to know them a little bit better. So they definitely hit the mark with a lot of the key specifics. And I definitely felt like a lot more comfortable at Oxy than I expected to, even as soon as like 2 weeks into college, which was pretty huge for me.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. I was going to say that, and I see Dinah asked in the chat box, are all residence halls co-ed? For the most part, all residence halls are co-ed. Each hall that may look a little different. For some halls, one floor might be male identifying students, and the next floor will be female identifying students. For some, it's broken up by wing. Some will have male and female identifying students living kind of intermittently throughout the hall. And there's also gender neutral housing options, I believe, where you can live with a student of the opposite identifying sex. So lots of ways to kind of slice and dice and rearrange housing by gender within the context of Oxy, certainly. And all residence halls, I should probably, since you mentioned the common room absolutely is going to be a place where students hang out. Every residence hall will have at least one common room plus a computer lab where you can print, do homework, gather as students. And within each residence hall dorm room, there's usually 2 beds or 3 beds, 2 or 3 desks and dressers, as well as a mini fridge and microwave that comes in each room as well. Absolutely. So we will keep moving on though, because first year living is a very exciting part of the first year experience, but after your first year, and in some cases even during your first year, our houses look like have themes to them, themed living. Actually, Ruby, you've lived in Burga's house, which is one of our themed halls. So could you talk a little bit about themed living, what it is, kind of the range of themes and kind of your experience within that as well? It's a lot.
Yeah. That's a big ask, but I'll try my best. So yeah, my sophomore year, I lived in Burkus House, which at the time was women's scholars themed, which is basically like all female identifying people lived in that house. It was, so this is it's an old converted frat house. So it has like very girl frat vibes. And I was a transfer student to Oxy coming in, and I really thought I was going to be thrown like willy-nilly in some random room with like a first year, or I don't know. I was expecting crazy things. And then I came and I got put in like a really, only think we got like 20, 25 women identifying students live in Burkus House. So it was really nice. Like we have a huge living room, a ginormous kitchen. We had 2 fridges. So it was like, and we have this giant flat screen. So it was really nice to be able to like have a much smaller community with people who have kind of like, there's other themes, but this theme was nice because I can kind of like go to the bathroom and not have to worry about like, I don't know, someone seeing me in my underwear. Like it was just like kind of chill. We had all the ladies, we were just like vibing in our little house. And it was really nice. I know there's other themes that can be more identity based or also more like lifestyle based. So there's like substance free, quiet hall, queer house, there's food justice. So I was like randomly placed in Burkus House, but I really, really valued that experience. And it definitely was like the cornerstone to my like intro to Oxy's community. And it was really, really nice. Highly suggest Burkus House. I think they're changing the theme a little bit to be possibly, I think, like queer women of color themed, which would be really awesome. That'd be like a really, really cool space to have on Oxy's campus. But either way, loved living there.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's so true. Part of the excitement with themed living is that it can change and be elastic. And just as a school, of 2,000 students, Oxy is able to be pretty nimble in different ways to kind of change to reflect student interests, student wants and demands. Many of these themed communities came out of students saying, this is a space that we would like to see, that we want the campus to kind of invest itself in. Poly Hall, and I don't actually know the history fully behind Poly Hall, but certainly was a Oxy institution by the time I got to campus and continues to be a combination of, I would say, first year living and upper class living and themed living all in one, in that you see students truly from their first year all the way to their senior year living in Poly. It is our multicultural themed hall, which means that there's a certain amount of intentionality that goes into the programming that the hall puts on throughout the year. It also means that students who choose to live in Poly Hall have to apply and write about why they want to be in this space, kind of why they align with the hall's values. And so within Poly Hall, you have our MLK Hall or our MLK Lounge on the first floor, which is able to serve as a student space for club meetings, for speakers. It has a fun outdoor patio. Have any of you done any work on programming in Poly Hall or with Poly Hall? I'm just curious. Was okay. Well, not important. No, it's used in a lot of different ways, throughout the year by different students. I was just curious, but certainly not the only hall. Norris is another one that has actually kind of 4 towers. Each has a common area in the middle, so it's almost like quad style living. Luca, you were in a Norris quad. Would you like to describe kind of what goes into a Norris quad? And I believe that they are kind of changing to be more identity-based towers. But at least what was the Norris experience when you lived there, and at least logistically, what's it like living in a quad?
Yeah, living in the quad was a great experience for me. So Norris, essentially what it is you have like one common room and another connected common room, and you apply either, or how it has historically been is that you would either apply with a group of 8 people or a group of 16 people and kind of either take one side of the quad or both of them. And you basically pick a theme, and then you live and you kind of program around that theme throughout the year. So my group's theme was obscure mental disorders and mental health awareness. And I have one of our housemates who was super passionate about it and does a lot of research in the area as well. So had a lot of knowledge about all of these obscure mental disorders and kind of organized programming around creating awareness for them. So the entire year we would like go in, we host these programs, people could come in and they could learn a little bit about something they probably didn't know about before, but also it was just a really good space. Like having that little common area just meant I could go up and I'd have a safe space where I could go do work with people, just kind of mess around. Just watching movies on those big couches together was always fun. You get your own showers and your own bathrooms, which are nice too. And we didn't really know the people we didn't apply with a separate group of people who was across from us, but we actually just ended up with a good group of people who we all knew. They were a bunch of singing folk my little quad of musical folk knew very well because that's how that's how Oxy communities work. But through the entire year, we'd just like walk over and we'd walk between the quads and stuff. We played board games together, and everything was just really, really, really fun. The only thing was it was up the hill, which means that you're going to have to work out your calves getting up and down that hill twice a day. But it was a fantastic living space. And while those towers are changing to be based more around identity, in the past, it wasn't necessarily like you could do basically anything. Like I know people who have gone and who have applied just based on the fact that they all played soccer together, and their programming was just like watching soccer games on TVs together and stuff like that. And there have been, I know people who applied based on other aspects of identity and stuff like that. So it's definitely super inclusive. And if you want to live with a group of people, it is a fantastic space.
Absolutely. And certainly some of the better views on campus, because as you mentioned, it is at the top of the hill. So the hike is worth it, I think, for some of those California vistas. Great. And then there's upper class halls, which, as the name suggests, incorporates students kind of after their first year, anywhere between their sophomore, junior, or senior year. And as we kind of look through them and talk about them, I think it's also important to talk about what housing means and looks like in terms of being an upper class student, because I think we often tend to kind of focus on student housing from that first year transition experience. But the reality is these are communities that you are a part of for all 4 years, just as you're a part of Oxy for all 4 years. And so as much as students live in them, students are also able to take leadership roles within these halls. And Camille and Lauren, you were both RAs. And so I'm curious to kind of hear about what inspired you to become an RA. When did you, I guess, what does that look like? When do students get to first be an RA? And how did you know it was kind of the right call for you? Camille, do you want to kick us off?
For sure. So they send out kind of emails if you're interested in being an RA, here's some more information. They'll have information sessions, and then you're able to apply in the fall semester usually. And then you do interviews in the spring semester, and they hire you in the spring semester just so that you know for the next year, just so that you know kind of where you'll be living / if you'll have to make like other living arrangements in the case that you aren't hired as an RA. So that's kind of like the process. And for me, my biggest thing really that attracted me to the role was that it pays for your room and board. So if you're an RA, the school I guess pays for your room and board. You don't have to pay that. And they also pay for your meal plan. So that was really big for me, just because college is expensive and I want to save money where I can, of course. And then along with that, I was really excited because RAs get their own room. And as much as like I loved my freshman year roommate, it is nice like just to have your own space and just somewhere to like decompress on your own. I'm such an introvert. I really do like love that, having that space. But outside of like those reasons, I would say I just was really interested in being kind of a role model in the hall for other first years. I applied specifically to be an RA in a first year hall. And I just was really looking forward to, welcoming the new first years into the Oxy community and trying to, implement some of like what I would wanted and got as a first year. So I just wanted to continue that on and allow others to have a good experience in the hall. So that was another reason why I decided to become an RA.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for those of you that don't know, a little trivia that I just learned before the session is Lauren was actually Camille's RA in Braun. And so I guess kind of the same question for you, Lauren. What did being an RA mean to you? And you did it for 2 years, I believe, right? So you did it and liked it enough to stick around. I guess what brought it to you, and where did you kind of find the most value in the work you did?
Yeah, so like Camilla, I applied to specifically be an RA in a first year hall. And for me, I think the greatest influence in that was one of my first year RAs. His name was Raul, and I remember I was having some personal challenges my first year. And one day I was just chilling in the common room and Raul came up and he sat down, and I remember seeing him at the big residence hall meeting that we had at the beginning of the year, but he sat down with me and he talked. And from then on, like whenever he would walk by, he would check in on me, or I could pop by his room anytime I needed to have a conversation about something. And it was really cool having a person in my building and in my space who I felt so comfortable coming to talk to about anything that went on. And I knew they would be there for me and they really had my best interests at heart. So that's something that I wanted to recreate in the residence halls, particularly for students of color who are maybe having a difficult time adjusting to Oxy. I wanted to be that person that they felt that they could always come to as well. So that was a lot of my inspiration for becoming an RA. And I tried to be intentional about that in the programming that I was putting on. Like one of my favorite programs was actually, I was in Broughton, so it was my first year as an RA. We put on this program for women of color, and it was like a talking and taco circle. And so we had a bunch of faculty and staff come in who were all women of color and a bunch of students, and we had it catered by this really nice taco place in LA. And everyone just got together and talked openly about what it was like to be a person of color who was woman identifying on campus and how we took up space. And it was just a really nice event to sort of center that specific identity on campus. And yeah, that's one of the reasons I do it.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's powerful to hear. I mean that these programs, that the work of being RAs, I think we often associate it with, roommate disagreements or, restocking paper in the computer lab. But I think there's a lot of value and emotional labor that goes into being an RA that, in so many ways, I mean, really shapes the campus community. Again, kind of bringing it back to this idea of what does this look like at a school of 2,000 students? Why does it so matter? Is because the conversations that you have in your residence halls, the programming that goes into those residence halls, I think sets the stage in a lot of ways for what the campus continues to talk about outside of those residence halls. Just as we kind of talk about Oxy in the context of Los Angeles, these ideas of communities within communities. I think there's a lot we could say just about that. So I don't want to move on too quickly, but as we're going, if you do have questions, audience members, always welcome to bring them into the chat box, or the Q&A feature, I should say, so that we can really tailor this question to you. Ruby, you lived in Berkus Hall, Big Berkus Hall, which is one of our larger halls, and typically tends to see more upper class students because it is a bit more apartment style, in that you tend to have your own kitchen area and bathroom with a roommate or two. So, I mean, I would love to hear kind of what that looked like for you as a junior, but also not as an RA. Obviously you weren't an RA, but where you kind of found leadership or roles for yourself, or at least support, in your residential experiences.
Yeah, so Berkus was truly like living in the lap of luxury. And when I had to leave because of COVID in March, it was truly like the saddest thing to have to say goodbye to my room. I had a gorgeous view and I had my own bathroom, and it was just so swanky. Like me and my roommates had a couch in our room, and it really was like just so special. Like Berkus is kind of, I feel like, the dorm that like juniors and seniors live in when they're like, I'm like a little older Oxy now. I get to live in the swanky dorm. And so like I had that for my junior year, and I was feeling very just, I don't know, expensive. I was feeling at Berkus. Kind of what was so special, I think, about that room was when I was living in Little Berkus, aka Berkus House versus Big Berkus, Oxy put a lot of intention in putting transfer students like near or with transfer students. So two of my closest friends from that house, we ended up living in Berkus together. They like switched because they went abroad opposite semesters. And then now this year, we're living 2 doors down from Berkus in our like own little senior house, all the 3 of us together. So literally since our like first day of orientation, we've always been living together. And I just think that is a testament to how much like Oxy creates that community. Even for someone who transferred like in their sophomore year, I was like, there's no way I'm making friends in my dorm. Like it's just everyone, they're all doing their thing. But now I'm like still living with the same 2 ladies, and we're in this little house together, even in COVID times. So yeah, in terms of like the leadership question, honestly, I don't know, because Berkus, is kind of a little bit more like we're all in our room type vibe because there's no like communal bathrooms. But I do think if you come to Oxy and you're getting a little older in the upperclassmen, I highly suggest living in Berkus. There's really like the underground parking, the gym, Saturday night dinners in Berkus is really, yeah.
Absolutely. And Ruby, just while you're on the mic, you were from LA originally, and so I know sometimes students from Los Angeles, say, well, why can't I just live at home and commute to school? Because we require all students to live on campus for those first 3 years, even if you're from LA, even if you're from down the block. And how would you explain to someone from LA why living on campus is so different than commuting from home, even if it's only a 20 or 30-minute drive away?
Yeah, this is actually something I like really worried about coming to Oxy is that not only was I gonna be like, is it even worth it if I like went home frequently, but also that like I wouldn't get like the college experience being so close to home and like being from the city. But something I think Oxy does that's really, really special is create a community strong enough that you're like, yes, I want to be here. There is no way I would prefer to live with my parents over this. And I, even being from LA and like going to schools kind of across the city my whole life, I still got like a really, really special and full and well-rounded college experience. And I think a lot of that is related to living, eating, and studying on the same campus and in the same community as like the same 2,000 people every year. And it just wouldn't have been the same without that. And I think, I mean, we always talk about the Oxy community, but it really is like so hard to describe with words because it's just so special and it's so tight knit. And I think a lot of that, like, as I just said, a lot of that is like, we all go to the MP, which is like our main dining hall. We all go to the same library. We all live within like, I don't know, a few acres of each other. I don't know how big Oxy is, but you know what I'm saying. And yeah, that was definitely something I was worried about coming from LA. But I also kind of found myself as I got kind of older, as I spent more time at Oxy, going home less and like really because I was just so involved on campus. Like I didn't even have time. I was like, I gotta go to class. I gotta go to all my other meetings. I have all these extracurriculars, and I love my bed at Oxy. Like I don't know, maybe like a home cooked meal is nice. We definitely have that advantage being a local. Going like just having to drive home instead of fly. But yeah, I think like living on Oxy's campus is unbeatable in versus living at home if you're from out.
Yeah. In a similar vein, but also kind of the opposite vein. And this is just some more upperclassmen halls, Wiley Hall, Haynes Hall, which is home of former President Barack Obama. And we have this nice offering of him this in front of the residence hall. And actually, I believe there's a plaque above his residence dorm room. So you may have the honor of living in the same triple as Obama. And as I've heard some of our tour guides say, if Obama can live in a triple, so can you. Which is a pretty even split in some of our halls between doubles and triples. But Lauren, the whole reason I guess not to kind of lose track of the question, you were coming from much further away on the East Coast. And so I guess in ways that Ruby is talking about, kind of, even though home is close by, you have your own community at Oxy. When did you kind of feel like your community became Oxy instead of Maryland, I guess, if ever? And I'm kind of reflecting on my own transition from Chicago, where that first year I still felt like who I was and where I was from was Chicago. And it wasn't until later on in my Oxy experience that I kind of started to feel more like, okay, this is more of a home than that. So what was your timeline? Maybe it was very different. Maybe I'm sort of extrapolating or projecting.
For me, I feel like Oxy didn't truly start to feel like a home until my second semester, first year. I think coming in and getting used to the class schedule and the class expectations and my roommates and trying to make friends, I think all of those things kept me so sidetracked in a way that it wasn't until I went home for winter break, and I got back here and I was like, oh, well, this is different. And then I kind of reflected on how much different life was at home now than at Oxy. That's when it first started feeling like Oxy was my new normal. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Julius.
No, it definitely did. And Camille, I'd be curious to hear your interpretation of events as well. And I guess Camille, actually, did most of your friends stay in Massachusetts, or was everyone kind of leaving for college, or what did that look like for you?
So I have a really close group of friends from home. One friend went down to Howard in DC for school, and the rest pretty much stayed in Massachusetts. So yeah, going to California for school, everyone was like, wow, like what are you meeting movie stars? Like people were so like excited for me. And I'm pretty sure I was the first one from my high school to attend Occidental College as well. Like not many people out here really have heard of the school before just because I'm in like a small rural area. But I was like one of those seniors in high school who was always like, oh, I can't wait to leave my town, you know, small town vibes, whatever. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and everyone's like talking to my mom, oh my gosh, like, are you scared to have your daughter go all the way across the country? And my mom's like, no, like, she's going to California. Like, I'm so proud of her. Because my mom used to live in San Diego after she graduated from her undergrad. So she's like all for it. She's like any excuse to have a vacation out there. But yeah, I was really excited to get out of my town. And when I got to Oxy, or even when I visited Oxy, I visited the spring, I'm pretty sure April of my senior year. And as soon as I got on the campus, I was just like, yep, this is where I want to be for the next 4 years. This is it. And then like after adjusting to the school and everything, LA just has definitely become like a home to me. And I'm very lucky because I am one of those people who can adjust very easily to wherever I am and make it feel home. And I think a big part of that is finding your community and like who you surround yourself with. For me, it was being on the volleyball team and having like 16 other girls who are looking out for me all the time, and really making Oxy feel like that sense of home, just having that support system around me, especially with my family so far away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you had that. Really, because I remember, at least from my own experiences, almost feeling like guilty making new friends at Oxy that first year, as though I was like kind of cheating on my tight group of friends from Chicago back home. And it's like, oh, like, so it definitely does look different for every student. But at a school like Oxy, I think one of the benefits is that it becomes quite easy to find communities. Either through athletics, through your housing, but also through leadership opportunities. And Camilla and Lauren, you both talked a bit about being RAs and what that meant in terms of your own leadership on campus. But Luca, you got involved in student government, which is kind of another way that contributes to kind of the lived community at Oxy. Would you mind just talking a bit about what that looked like, and I guess eventually how it kind of led to your work within housing outside of the scope of being a resident advisor, which is traditionally what we think of. That, yeah.
So I'd say my idea of my sense of home at Oxy and my work as student government doesn't kind of go from student government to feeling at home. It's kind of the inverse, where after my first year, I felt I cared so deeply about this community that I really wanted to get involved and try and be a force for positive change. In terms of engaging with housing, when I became a class senator, I kind of got pushed into it a little bit. When our student government model, at least through Senate, has all of the senators specialize in something. And I decided to specialize in housing because I thought it would be interesting to explore all this lived policy. And then as soon as the pandemic hit, lived policy got more confusing very quickly. But through my first year, the thing that really gave me a lot of agency in terms of like my interaction with student government wasn't as much my interaction with the students, but my interaction with staff, especially like in the res ed office. Everyone who works in that office wants to be there and wants to be there for the reason of helping the students. And it was powerful. Like every meeting that I'd have sitting down with somebody who was in the res ed office would end with would open and close with, well, what does this do for the students? which I found admirable and I found very strong. And also, they really deeply cared about student voices. Like as a second year student on this campus, I got to sit on a committee for hiring Isaiah Thomas, who is now our Dean of Residential Education. So it really, the entire time through student government and through leadership and interacting with these administrators, I felt my voice was valued. I felt my voice was heard. And I really felt that they were truly and deeply caring for their students, which was powerful to me.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. In so many words, really. It's Oxy ticks because students make it tick, and that happens on a lot of different levels. And I just wanted to quickly point out that this is a photo of Erdman Hall, which is a upper class hall, as well as our substance-free hall. And some fun facts about Erdman that may be Oxy folklore. Correct me if you've heard otherwise, any students, but the version I heard is that some of our other famous alums, besides Obama, Ben Affleck actually lived in this hall during his time at Oxy, and that this is where he was living when he wrote his first draft of Good Will Hunting, which he had to write for a screenwriting class. And apparently the professor was unamused by the script, said that it had nowhere to go and was I think he failed the assignment, and so he left Oxy to pursue Good Will Hunting independently. But it all started in Erdman. So a little bit of Oxy trivia for your Thursday night certainly brings me some joy, at least. In a similar vein, Stearns, another upper class hall, that has quite a maze-like configuration. None of you have lived in Stearns, correct? Have you all heard the Stearns stories? Okay, Ruby, would you like to regale the audience with kind of the rumor on the street about Stearns?
Yeah, so there's like many urban myths surrounding Stearns, but the version I've heard is that it was built to house like the Russian Olympics team when the Olympics were in LA in 1984. So they made kind of like a maze with like weird corners to confuse them and make them throw off their game, and that like the windows are really small, so they felt like trapped or something. But that's what I've heard, is that the configuration is to make the Russian Olympics team like go crazy in it.
Absolutely, that's what I've heard. I don't know if anyone else has heard any other stories or rumors about Stearns or any residence hall. Someone asked in the Q&A earlier if there is sort of rivalries between different residence halls, and how would you describe, I guess, kind of the different ethos or aesthetic that each residence hall kind of gets, because I feel like obviously we're all one Oxy student body, but certainly halls carry a bit of weight to them. Would you agree? Would you disagree? What say you all about kind of the talk around houses?
Yeah, I can take this. I feel like it's very strong among first years, especially as you get to like settle into your first year dorm. It definitely feels like that's your home and that no one else's home is as cool as your home. So I just remember all of my conversations like first year, like through my CSPs and through my classes that were with other first year students, it would always just be oh, who are you? Oh, nice to meet you. Where are you living? Oh, you're in Chilcott? Okay, I guess that's cool. Like there was really this sense of like my home is better than your home. I remember my first year, I loved Bellion. I just spent so much time in the common room, and I had this like group of people who I'm still close with around campus and I'll stop and have conversations with, even though I haven't like hung out with them directly since like my first year living in Bellion. But I remember I spent a lot of time in Chilcott, especially because one of my classes was based on the Chinese board game Go. But a lot of my friends who were in the class were in Chilcott, and we spent a lot of time in the Chilcott common room discussing strategy. And I remember I just see all these people chilling in the Chilcott common room until like 2 a.m. And it was the same group of people every time talking about whatever they wanted to be talking about. And it was such a different life to my life at Bellion, where we had the same group, but it was where we had like the same style of group, but the conversations were very different and the people were very different, to the point where like my first year, you could distinctly feel by the end of first semester that like each dorm hall had kind of developed its like core and its theme, and all the common rooms were popping, but kind of in their own way. And it really like gave you this feel of like what it meant to be living in your hall versus someone else's hall.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate description. Camille, Lauren, anything to add about the lure of first year halls or kind of the reputations they built and developed?
I think one of the coolest things about the first year halls, and halls in general are the themes that they are assigned at the beginning of the year. And might I add, the RAs work really hard before students get there to make those themes really, really nice. A lot of them are usually punny, like a pun. When I was a first year, I lived in Stewie, and it was Stewie Doo, like for Scooby-Doo, Stewie Doo. And then when I was an RA, we did Toy Stewie, and we actually played this game with our residents for the new Toy Story movie. I didn't watch the movie, but there was this like spoon character, and we hid it in one of the decorations. And then we had this game for the first years to find it. And whoever found it won a prize from the RAs, and they found it like maybe a month or two into school. And it was really cool that they kept up that game for so long because we hit it really well. And I think that's one of the things that makes the residence halls cool too, like walking through, like your theme's not as cool as our theme and all that stuff too.
Yeah. And no, it's certainly one of the questions you ask as an alum. I feel like when I meet people who like went to Oxy, one of the first things we say is, "Oh well, what hall did you live in your first year at Oxy?" It in many ways is kind of an orientation, you know, how you orient yourself or your Oxy experience. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm not seeing too many questions, which is great, but I hope we're answering them for you. But again, this is for all of our prospective students watching at home. This is your time to really get your questions answered about the residential experience at Oxy. I want to kind of just end with somewhat counterintuitively, end with move-in day and orientation more broadly while we're talking about it and kind of talking about that first year experience, you know, as well as the transfer experience. But coming to Oxy as a new student, what happens? And I know there's always kind of not a rivalry, but you know, there's O team leaders, orientation team leaders, as well as res ed and advisors. And I feel like both of those, you know, in so many ways really play quite a bit of a role in developing that. And Ruby, you're an O team leader, right? You've done that, and Luca, you have as well. Luca, are you? Great. So this is a real battle of the RAs versus O team leaders. What all goes into that move-in day experience? And Luca, you started by talking about Oxy Engage at the beginning of the session, kind of that pre-orientation trip that students can opt into. So why don't you start off by what happens after Oxy Engage when kind of the rest of the incoming students come to campus?
I'm gonna open this by saying Ruby isn't only an O team leader, but Ruby is O core. Ruby runs the show, like puts on the whole shindig, if you will. But in terms of my orientation experience, I just think that move-in day is I am a very extroverted person, a very loud person, and I generally have a lot of energy, which means that like that first move-in day is like, that's my day. That's the day that I kind of live for in like the Oxy calendar. And every day, like on move-in day, my Oxy Engage move-in, it was nice. I was directed where I needed to go. Everyone was answering questions, and I like had my first 2 days on campus adjusting, which was nice. But then like the real move-in day, the O team leaders were out and everyone was in full orange. They had like their tiger paws and they were just shouting random cheers, and everyone was literally just kind of like prancing their way around the quad, like screaming at the top of their lungs. And like that was the day where I was just like kind of struck, taken aback, and I was on my extrovert high. I was with them. I was like going around. I was like, yeah, I was really nodding to like every cheer that was going on and everything like that. And it just felt like such a powerful atmosphere that it really kind of made me comfortable with this idea of moving into campus. I know some people are really just like kind of taken aback by this like level of O team energy, but I lived for it. And that meant that like my next year and also last year, although it wasn't this year, although it wasn't the same, we didn't get to have like all the cheers and all the in-person stuff. I've been a no team leader for 2 years, and it's been a great experience for me. I've really been able to help people and help incoming students really adjust to their first year experience and really sit with what it means to be going to college, how they're feeling about going to college, and how like their development of their story and like their adjustment to college might be different from those around them. So it's been a really rewarding experience for me. And also it's just like a way of really orienting myself with like this high energy atmosphere that gets me pumped for the first day of classes, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. So then Ruby, as O core, kind of facilitating the whole shebang, as it were, what's the method behind the madness, right? What is your goal for what incoming students are able to kind of expect and leave orientation week with?
Yeah, so I'm clearly very biased because I'm on O-Core, and that's like truly was the highlight of my college experience was being on O-Team and being on O-Core. So I will like severely plug orientation. and just like really go off for a second. But basically, why orientation is so special at Oxy specifically is that clearly I was on O-Core, Luca was on O-Team. It is like almost fully run and planned and like executed by students. So like people who just went through it, who like just experienced transitioning to Oxy, like recent Oxy, not like Oxy 50, 100 years ago, or even like 5 years ago. It's like last year or the year before. And they're like, this is what I feel like you need. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so like students, like being on O-Core, I got to like plan it and advocate for what I thought students needed in that experience, what I thought was valuable out of that, what I thought wasn't valuable. And then I got to train other students on how to be that leader, like that one-on-one. I have, as an O-Core, I have less like one-on-one interaction with new students. But so that's why I feel like Oxy's orientation is so special, because I truly spent like maybe 100 unpaid hours working on orientation and like crying with all the O-Core leaders, and like just really wanting to make that experience so meaningful and so special for new students, especially this last fall, because it was like COVID times, like no one was on campus. Like, how are you going to meet people? Like, this is like is way bigger than it ever would have been in person as a virtual experience. So really what it boiled down, is an opportunity for you to get to know your class, for you to get to know Oxy, and for O-Team leaders and for Oxy to get to know you. So basically we're like introducing you to like what college is, who you're going to college with, and where you're going to college. And a lot of it is like basically also the main pillar of what orientation is shaping the class, introducing you to Oxy's core values and like what we value as a community, what our community is like, and how to be a present and active student in that community. So I love orientation. Shout it out. It's so great. If you come to Oxy, it'll be a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lauren and Camilla, jump in if there's more to add, but I would say that, you know, in so many ways, O-Team sets the stage for the work that you both kind of carry throughout the year as resident advisors. That this is kind of the kickoff point for these conversations to materialize in residence halls, you know, over shared values. We have a question coming in, and if anyone else has any lingering questions, this is certainly the time to ask them in the Q&A box. But someone wants to know about doubles versus triples. How does it all work? And really, how comfortably do first year dorm rooms accommodate students in a triple? Like, does it work? Do we all survive? What advice would you have for students as they kind of sit with the knowledge that at Oxy, many of our halls, you know, have both doubles and triples? What say you? Lauren, why don't you kick us off first? Yeah, did you end up ever living in a triple?
No, I have never lived in a triple, but my best friend, she was in Stewie with me our first year, and she lived in a triple. To my knowledge, triples can be accommodating and fair when students, I've known them to rotate the beds to make it kind of fair for everyone. So in a triple, there's going to be the bunk, someone has to get the top, someone gets the bottom, and someone gets the single bed. So in the way that I've seen it work best and the roommates get along best is when they have like over the year some type of schedule to determine who gets the single bed. So the person on the top isn't just floating on the top for the whole year. But yeah, I've seen it work pretty well. So I was saying my best friend lived in a triple. One of her roommates had an extra hanging rack. So that was kind of a way to accommodate the closet situation. And there was more than enough room to have that rack in the room with them. So yeah, I saw it, and there was enough room for me to be in there while all three of them were in there as well. So it's definitely a doable space, and you get to know your roommates even better when you're even more closely mingled with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other triple stories, double or triple stories from your time, Luca, Camilla, Ruby?
Yeah, I lived in a triple my first year, and it was definitely, it wasn't, I don't feel like I need that much space to live, so it wasn't necessarily a problem in any way, shape, or form for me. But like a couple things about triples are that they have a real propensity to get messy. with 3 people living in a small space. Like I remember all of my roommates, we didn't really have any like set guidelines about how we wanted to keep the room clean or anything like that. And it just meant that like throughout the year, we all got okay with a slightly more and more level of dirty and general clutter, to the point where it entered a real state of entropy, where it just kept progressing towards chaos. And we really had to like sit down one day and be like, all right, y'all, we got to rail this in. So like the one thing I will say, especially if you're going to be living in like a tight space with 2 other people, is take those like roommate contracts seriously. Like the RAs, like they have you sit down with your roommates that first week, and they have you like talk about your boundaries and stuff like that you're safe with and that you feel comfortable with your roommates. I mean, my roommates kind of kept putting that off and putting it off and putting it off, just wanting to get to know each other and not having to deal with like the awkward, okay, this is how I feel comfortable in a space. And it didn't cause any problems for us, but like it really could have. So like take those seriously, no matter where you end up and no matter who you end up living with. Make sure that you voice your concerns and voice what you're comfortable with to your roommates, because it makes the situation so much more livable as you go. And I'm sure our situation would not have ended up as dirty and as messy as it eventually did if we sat down and talked about it from the get-go.
I think that's true with the roommate contract as well as the roommate housing form over the summer, that it's important to be accurate and list your real self and not your aspirational self. I think I made that mistake my first year. I was like, well, of course I'm going to be going to bed early and getting up early, and and then that was not the case. But we've got about 3 minutes left, so why don't we just spend this last few minutes together with final words of advice for seniors in high school who are tuning in. You all probably remember what that mid-November crunch felt like in your fall semester of senior year, when the application deadlines never felt more real. So what say you to prospective applicants out there before they head off into the night? Camilla, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. My younger sister is also a senior in high school right now and going through the same process, and I'm at home right now, so I'm seeing her and helping her out through it, and she's also applying to Oxy. So this is like really funny to be able to talk to you all and have that like insider information or whatever. But I would just say try to attend as many information sessions like this as you can, especially because you might not be able to get to see campus in person for a little bit. I would also say something that is really helpful, because it can seem a little overwhelming and like there's a lot going on. Try to make like a list and just, so you keep everything straight. You have to do like your FAFSA, and some people have like the CSS profile and all the schools you're applying to, and maybe some are on the Common App. So it helps to keep like a list to keep track of everything that you're doing. And like if you have any people who are in college around you, or just people who have gone to college around you, definitely talk to them. They have great advice, I'm sure, and can help you out if you need help. And then my final piece of advice, which I always say, is apply for scholarships, apply for as many as you can. When I was a senior in high school, I made a goal to apply for at least one a month. I usually ended up doing 2 a month. And through doing that, I was able to get my entire first year of college like paid for with the scholarship money. So that's like something that I highly recommend doing.
That's awesome. Lauren, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I really agree with all of that. One thing that I might add would be, don't be afraid to reach out to admissions offices to get in contact with a student who you can talk to and hear about real experiences from. I've had students reach out to me just from having my contact in the admissions office, and we really do love hearing from you all and hearing your questions and responding to you. And we really want you to pick the best school for you. So we're going to be honest and just tell you how we feel straight up. So I think that talking to students is a really, really helpful way. So if you can, email the admissions office, ask if there's a student on file who you can get their email address or something, and definitely reach out if you have any questions.
Absolutely, and I believe one of our admission counselors just shared in the chat box the link to find our student workers who are available, including many who are on this panel right now that you can continue the conversation with after we end. Luca, to you, final advice for seniors in high school.
Yeah, huge props to what Lauren just said. I think that is so big, like being able to like sit down with students and really ask like the critical questions about whether this is the right place for me or not. And I think a lot of that can also be reflected like in your applications themselves. I think especially with liberal arts schools like Oxy, like writing about yourself, I remember I struggled so much with all my applications. Like writing about yourself feels weird, and it always is going to feel weird. But especially when you're applying to liberal arts schools like this, like really let your personality shine through. I feel like it's so huge in applications, no matter what you're doing, and so huge in like trying to get a grasp of what a community feels like. So write about what you're passionate about, and really don't be afraid to look weird or look quirky or try and be more idyllic than you like necessarily are or anything like that. Like that is fantastic. Especially in like interviews, if you're doing interviews with a counselor or with even a senior or something like that, they love to see like the weird stuff a little bit as well. It's just kind of don't be afraid, be yourself. And I think that is so much of like what the Ox community is structured around as well. And that is like so much of what we want to see from our students. So totally, yeah, reach out and also just kind of be you. Yeah.
Great. And Ruby, why don't you close us out?
I don't even know how I'm going to follow all that really good advice. That was all very, very, very good advice. I wish someone had told me that when I was applying for college. I think quick plug interview. Right now, it's mostly senior fellows interviewing. So you'll be interviewing with a student. So it's much less scary. And we will answer your questions as a student. So I highly suggest interviewing. Other than that, I think, I was a transfer student. Clearly, I made the wrong decision my first go around. So what I learned from that is really trust your gut in the college process. You'll know when a college feels right, when it feels like a good fit. And of course, there are other factors. There's finances, there's location. But if you have things that are like your deal breakers, where you want to go to school, what kind of school you want to go to, what programs you want to study, don't let or as much as you can, don't let other factors let you break those deals. You know what I'm saying? Really, like if you know that you will do well at a certain school in a certain format, or you just get really good vibes from one school, trust that gut over what it looks like on paper, because that gut's most likely right. I think I would have gone to Oxy out of high school if I trusted my gut versus my other school. So, and I'm living it here now. So that's always my advice.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time in a very stressful week and a very stressful semester to join us for this conversation on living at Oxy. For those of you that joined us, I just as much want to thank you for making time to learn a little bit more about Oxy and for attending our preview Oxy session on residential housing on campus. As a reminder, this was the last video in a series of weekly panels we've had throughout the fall. So again, in the chat box, you can see our link for our preview Oxy page on the admissions website, where you can watch all of our panels, everything from today's episode on housing to previous sessions on studying abroad, living in Los Angeles, athletics at Oxy, among others. Really make the most of the virtual sessions and resources available to you. Otherwise, best of luck with the rest of your senior year in the application process, and we look forward to connecting with you all on the other side. Take care and have a good night.